So, what's the theory behind everything? This is kind of abstract, but if you think about it in these couple of ways, then you'll really understand the goals we're going after and how we kind of do this. So, the first thing you're going to notice is any type of planning, whether it's business planning, asset protection, estate planning, any of those kinds of things, we are basically creating other people. Because one of the main goals, whether it's avoid probate, protect yourself from lawsuits, or build a thriving business, is that you have to separate yourself from your money and separate your money from you. You have to separate your business from you and yourself from your business. And the first step in that is really to give that thing its independent character. If we're setting up a business and we want it to protect us, then we want it to be its own separate person. We're used to thinking about corporations and things as people. People with their own lives, their own family in the form of the employees and the customers they deal with. People with their own parents in the form of their board of directors or their shareholders and their members. And we don't really have separation from that, and we don't really have a business if the owners and shareholders can't walk away. It's like when you were sitting at home with your small children before they went off to school. They were never able to be separated from you. You weren't really your own person at that point. You were your child, and your child was you. You didn't have separate lives, so there was no freedom, and though there also was no protection with that. Chances were then, if something happened to you, it also happened to your child. If something happened to your child, it happened to you. And we, as a basic principle, want to separate out these risks. We don't want the risk to our business, the risk to our stuff in the market, to affect everything else that we have. And really the way we do that is to make these their own living, breathing people with their own personalities and goals and dreams, and that they pursue them. And so that's why having that business that way raises its value, protects you, and protects your legacy. We want to have those corporate formalities done, have the board operating. We want to be able to step out and have it still working. We also want it so that if it gets into trouble with the contract or gets sued or something happens to an employee, that what happened in the business and that business life doesn't come through to us. We also don't want to go out and get into a car accident or something like that and have that risk flow through and hurt the business. We want them to be separate, independent people so that what happens to your business doesn't always happen to you. Same thing happens for your legacy. That's what we're kind of looking at with trusts and wills and things. Think about it. When you pass away, you're gone, but we have this estate left behind. And that estate, we try to give the same qualities of a person. It's got a body and all the property that you have. It's got a mind in the form of the personal representative. And it can do these things, and it carries a life of its own, and it hands your things out. Same thing as a trust, right? We've got the corpus. That was the trust assets. We've got the settlor. That was the parent of the trust that brought it into being. Then we've got the trustee, who is the mind of the trust and carries out what it was raised to do. And, just like you pass your values on to your children, when you write that trust document as a settlor, you're creating those formative experiences for that new legal person that's going out there. And what happens to you doesn't happen to that trust or the trust body. And the same thing too, sometimes happens to that trust doesn't happen to you. And this becomes even more important with family legacy, right? In a lot of ways, we want to make our family be someone completely independent. This thinking of them as its own person. Okay, it's got its own feelings. It's got its own constituent parts. It comes together. It has a mind. It has a body. It has feelings, and it reacts to things. It has possessions. Think about it that way, and that's where we're setting up our family governance and how we talk to each other and things to keep the family healthy. Is because we're going to have this family be something that will thrive and continue on without us. Something that can take care of its own wounds, take care of its own dreams and ambitions and goals. So basically, when we're looking at planning and things, that's what we're looking at. We're setting up these independent people, giving them goals and lives, and watching those goals and lives happen and seeing them flourish. That is the basic theory behind everything. So when I'm talking about things like you've got to separate yourself from your money or your money from you, it's because we want these things to have their own breathing, living life, to be like their own independent person. That's the only way we can build up those protections, okay? That business or that trust being its own separate person is the only thing that puts up that wall between it and you, so that its risks don't affect you and your risks don't affect it, so that it can take care of you. Because remember, if you can't walk away from your business, you've got a job. Your assets aren't safe if they're in your pocket. You only risk what's on the table. And the way you take things off the table is you pick it out of your pocket and you hand it to someone else before you go take the risk. That way, it's not in your pockets to lose if you get mugged. It's gone. It's in the bank. It's somewhere else. It's not there. And anytime that something comes at risk, it's because usually you went and pulled it back into your pocket, or you brought someone with you when you went over to the business's house, when you went over to the trust house. That's how the trust got robbed, because you brought somebody on in. That's what happens when you do fraudulent transfers, or when you don't keep up with the corporate formalities, or when you don't treat the trust like it's a separate person and give your kids demand rights. If they can just demand that money to come in, then they can just bring their creditors right on into the trust and say, here you go, boys, because I have the right to demand something happen. It's not that trust isn't its own independent person that can make its own decisions. So think about it that way. When you start thinking about how you're setting this up, you're setting up someone else to take care of a purpose. And you're talking about how these things are going to interact with each other. If you could think about trust and all these things as people with lives independent from you, and they kind of take care of each other as a family, but they're still independent, that's where the best protection comes from. That's where the best planning comes from. That should be your main goal. And the orchestra of all these things coming together, that's how you create wealth, keep families together, keep everyone happy and safe, and really live a prosperous life. So no matter how complicated the trusts and things are, no matter how intricate the structure, always start thinking about, who is this person we're creating? What's its personality? What's it going to do? How's it going to behave and act? That's really what we're talking about when we're given powers and writing documents and contracts. How are they going to act? How are we going to operate? What's their personality? And if that thing's something that's going to thrive and prosper in the personality of a person, it's probably also the same thing that's going to thrive and prosper for your life and for your business and for your family. So those are the theories behind it all. Look at it through that lens when you look at the things that I teach you and that I show you. And you'll build a life with these actors and these friends that'll prosper. And the great thing about it is these other things don't have a lifespan. They'll outlive you and they'll take care of your family for generations if you build them right and give them the right personality. If you raise them right, like you'd raise children. So they go out with those formative values and practice those things. So keep that in mind. And think of all the elements in your plans as people that interact and have their own lives. Any other comments or questions about this, please leave them down below.